Hey everybody, welcome back to the MOVE podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Here we are talking about the Dauphiné Libre and the Tour of Switzerland, which just finished today. But before we get to that, a couple things. First of all, JB, happy Father's Day to you
likewise.
and to all the other dads listening.
Likewise, times 5 for you.
Yep.
Did you ever?
No, never.
Did you
never
not?
thought. No, I didn't. I like kids.
You knew exactly where I was going to go with that. Like,
Yeah, I didn't think that was.
That wasn't in the playbook.
Nah, but set of twins in there, so
True.
Really 4.
Yeah.
But anyways, and then, the only other thing I got before we get to talking about these races, which are the last real indications of riders' form before the Tour de France, is I can barely walk today, speaking of form.
I don't know very many details on what you did yesterday, and it sounds nuts, and I need to know how you ended up doing that.
So here's exactly how it happened. So months and months and months ago, my good friend Eric Burns, former major leaguer, endurance junkie, has been on the forward maybe a year ago. Great guy, one of the most energetic, passionate people I've ever been around. He called me months ago and said, "Hey, let's go run the trail marathon over in Leadville and raise money for this great organization called Warriors Ascent, which helps veterans who come back with PTS and suicidal thoughts, et cetera, et cetera." And I said, "Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm in."
It was just a flip. Yeah, like you don't think these things are actually going to come to fruition, right?
Right. That's right.
and it did.
And then when we were, you guys remember this, you and Dave, remember we were in Israel and for the start of the Giro, and I woke up that one day and I thought something's up with my low back, like upper glute, and so I was rolling it out and it just hurt like hell. And so I self-diagnosed myself with sciatica, and which I don't even know if I have. I don't know what that is, but I said I told myself I had, so I stopped running and started riding and swimming and doing other things. And told the boys, I said, "I'm really sorry, I can't run." And so, but I had recruited several people to do it with us. So I had recruited Ryan Holiday, the author, who then got mono and couldn't do it. I recruited Mitch Hall, former SEAL Team 6 guy, who did do it. And I recruited another forward alum, Jesse Itzler, who didn't do it. And so with people out for various reasons, you had your chance. Oh no,
to slide out of it.
Yeah, I mean, the guys came into Aspen before. I had a plan to be on the support team, help at the aid stations, whatever. And I had been getting some body work, and I had 2 things happen. One, and believe me, we're not here to talk about my slow marathon yesterday, but real quick, I started to see improvement in my quote unquote sciatica. But the second thing, and the biggest problem, is I haven't run.
Yeah, no miles.
No, I haven't been running
at all.
And so, but something told me, I mean, maybe it's because Burns is just such an infectious, like crazy, freaky dude that I was like, fuck it, I can't let this guy down. So I said, you know what, I'm running. And you know what he said? He said, "Of course you are."
That was not an option for
So
him.
here you got, for those who don't know, I think most of our listeners do, Leadville's base is 10,000 feet, never get any lower than that. The marathon turnaround, the highest point was 13,185, I think. 6,200 total vert, which means even worse, 6,200 total descent. And my legs, I mean, today I can't even, it's like I'm just sitting in a chair.
Just to be clear, you ran a trail marathon at very high altitude yesterday with no running in your legs.
Right. And no part of that is a good idea. For you people at home, don't ever, just because my dumb ass went out and did it. I got to tell you, I've run several marathons, but I had a moment there where I was like, my gut was off. I'd never had this in marathons. My gut was off. I was nauseous.
Well, you're not running. Well, time-wise, you're out there a lot longer.
I ate breakfast like right before the start. I did everything wrong. So instead of talking about really bad athletes, let's now talk about some good athletes. Because
one last thing, how long did it take you to run this?
I'm embarrassed to say,
dude.
But no, it took us just under 6 hours. We didn't. We weren't trying to, to kill ourselves or perform in terms of result. But I mean, the winner was like 3:38. I mean, it's a very hard, super steep. I mean, the steep sections we just hiked essentially, and then ran whenever we could. But it was mostly hiking / walking.
Dude,
yeah,
insane. Well, congratulations.
Why? Thank you.
Escaping that injury free, we hope. Right?
Yeah.
All right, now let's get to it.
Yeah,
Dauphiné and the Tour of Switzerland
so
went
I think,
down.
You know, look, this is the last, and so for all you cycling fans, now we're going to talk about cycling. To me, this is the last checkpoint. This is the last exam before you get to the big show, unless you talk about the national championships for a lot of these riders, especially the Europeans. But it's just a one-day race, and in some of the countries you can't really test yourself. And the Belgian national championships isn't that hard. Neither is it hard in the Netherlands or in most of these countries. So, but this is the last test, and so for us to look at the favorites outside of Chris Froome and Tom Dumoulin, who obviously did the Tour of Italy, this was our chance to check them out. And so it was interesting what I observed, and I'll start with the Dauphiné because my big favorite, when I saw the route of the 2018 Tour de France was Vincenzo Nibali, just because of the technical nature of it, the cobblestones, his experience. He in the Dauphiné Libéré was just pack fill. He was nowhere. I mean, never once. And I don't know if that was his strategy or if that's all he had. And I suspect it was the former. But I expected, I thought he might show himself, at least on one day, a little bit more. Look, the other thing you saw there at the Dauphiné Libéré, really the headline is Team Sky is Team Sky. I mean, they were absolutely dominant. They crushed the team time trial. Geraint Thomas, you know, if Chris Froome has a problem come July, legally speaking, or with regards to his case, Geraint Thomas is a great replacement, if not the 5 or 6 other guys they're going to bring.
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple names that were stand out in the Tour de Suisse real quick, and then I have some specific things I want to ask you about them using this as a tune-up. So where were, you know, obviously Richie Porte and Quintana. What were your thoughts on watching them?
You know, it's interesting.
And you were a big fan of Richie this time last year.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in just a sec. I think if you compare the two races, the Dauphiné and the Tour of Switzerland, to me, the Tour of Switzerland just didn't look that difficult. I mean, if you really think about how Richie Porte won the Tour of Switzerland, the opening stage and the team time trial, they crush everybody, which counts for his individual time. Mm-hmm. He managed his losses on the one uphill finish, which Quintana looked absolutely explosive and strong. And the thing that stood out the most about that day is Nairo Quintana won by 22 seconds. At some point, that gap, I think, was down to 10 or 11 seconds, and Richie Porte started looking around, started looking back, and Jacob Fuglsang caught him. He didn't... and again, he has 3 weeks. I'm not. We don't know if his form is on the rise, if it's on the decline, if it's whatever it is. He didn't, even though he won. He didn't look great to me.
But he did also have not only the team time trial with a strong team, they had an individual time trial which favored him.
So he won. That's the second part. He got time in the team time trial, and he got time over a few guys in the individual time trial. But if you look at his overall results, I mean, that's not your typical Richie Porte time trial result. Again, it's another indicator that I just don't think things are there yet. And for his hope, or for his sake, let's hope that it's coming and not having left.
Yeah. Here's what I would have been dying to ask you about, because there are a lot of us that were casual fans. We watched the Tour de France. We watched some spring classics maybe, and we just aren't super dialed in. I think a lot of average fans are not watching the Dauphiné or the Tour of Switzerland during all those years that you were doing it. Here's my question is this. If it's a tune-up for the Tour de France, are the contenders, people really focused on the Tour, are they there to try to win, or are they there to really use it as a true tune-up and maybe not show all their cards?
Yeah. Look, you can do it both ways. I think if you choose to play possum, for lack of a better phrase, you still have to have a day or a time trial where you say, I'm going to race today like it's the Tour de France.
Just to check yourself?
Well, to check yourself, to give, and it's good to give an indication, but also it's excellent training. Like you can't replicate that type of intensity by yourself and on a training ride. And so you either go about it that way, or, which was often the case in my situation, is you try to win. But when you try to win, then you also play a bit of possum, right? If you're that good, then try to pull back and hold back and still win. And so, or in the situation of some of these guys, have a teammate that can win. So you can also play the super domestique, do some favors for the guys who always help you. That always, you can imagine, always comes back to you. So there's a couple ways you can play it, but yeah. So for me, it was important. I liked to win the Dauphiné. I liked to win in Switzerland. I liked, those are big events. Those are outside.
Yeah,
of
it's not a chumpy race.
No. Outside of the Tour of Switzerland is the fourth. Yeah. You could argue is the fourth biggest race in the world.
So you talk a little bit about this Tour de Suisse looking a little bit easier, maybe not testing their legs as much as you'd like to see. You mentioned, as we were discussing some of this, some very short stages at the Dauphiné.
Well, which is maybe, we've talked a lot about this, right? How this sport tries to reinvent itself. Do they try new things? Do they shorten the stages to make them
more exciting,
exciting, more dynamic, more explosive? Do they do circuit races? I mean, Tour of Switzerland had 2 circuit races. I mean, these are all things that we've chit-chatted about, and they do tend to animate the peloton more. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I'm a rider preparing for the Tour de France and I choose the Dauphiné in the last 3 days, or what did I tell you? 130, 110, and 129 kilometers.
Correct, yeah.
You
want to be tested harder than that.
Yeah, I did some extra miles after that, for sure.
These cyclists have a weird mindset. You want more and more and more. Well, it's just to see where you're at. Yeah. Getting ready for the.
But look, the thing I want to say too is, and I forgot to say it, is this is just, and we've talked about it before, this is not your normal year, right? This only happens once every 4 years. It's now not 2 weeks until the Tour, it's 3 weeks. And that is, it doesn't sound like a lot to people. I mean, our lives pass, weeks come and weeks go. But if you're leading up and trying to get ready for the Tour, the difference between 2 and 3 weeks, because of the Soccer World Cup and the Tour being pushed back, that's an X factor here, and it's an X factor for a whole lot of reasons. I mean,
break down some of those reasons that 2 versus 3 weeks. So most of us, that doesn't extra recovery or rest time seems like it could be a good thing, but that's too long without your legs racing.
It's not a bad thing. My number one concern, and I was a guy who was not rail thin. I mean, I had to really try to be as light and as lean as I could, and the best way to get light and lean was racing. And so you get through one of these 2 races, and then you got 2 weeks you can maintain. 3 weeks, 3 weeks, that's just another week of going out to dinner with friends, or it's just the kilos or the pounds, whatever you want to, which phraseology you want to use. It just comes on. That would stress me out. So these guys just have to be super disciplined. There's also the things that we all know and expect. I mean, illness that's another week's window of getting sick potentially, getting injured potentially, crashing in a training ride potentially. Look, something's going to happen in that 3rd week to somebody that we're talking about. You just watch, you just know. And by the way, that certain somebody could be Chris Froome, because I for the life of me, I can't imagine that we just go to the Tour with this situation unresolved. We very well may. It makes absolutely no fucking sense that we do, because if by chance it's the ruling isn't on his side, then what do? We go back and wipe out. I mean, it's just the fact that the sport of cycling has not resolved this fucking issue by now.
Oh, right. We're setting ourselves up to wipe somebody else from the history books.
How can we not have solved this by now?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm not making any predictions, but that extra week is just another week where something like that could come down. So you never know.
What about in this 3 week period? Are is there still decision making about the squad that goes to the Tour?
Of course. None of these teams, none of the 20-plus teams that are going to the Tour de France know exactly who's going. I mean, I got a text this morning from somebody asking me about, some guys in the Tour, and I said, look, we still have 3 weeks to go, so I have no idea. Right? I mean, obviously, the bigs go. But
right.
when you get down to, now 8-man teams, another bad idea, you get down to guys 5 through 8, those guys are all sitting home going, gosh, I hope they pick me.
Wow. So what's like the latest that someone might get called up and find out they're doing the Tour de France?
You can get called up the day before probably. I mean, if somebody gets sick.
Right.
Yeah, you can.
So you have to kind of assume or be prepared for the chance to go. If you're somewhat considered, you're always an alternate.
If you're an alternate, and they I think these teams, if they pick 8 and then they have 2 alternates, those alternates have to just imagine that they're going. They have to continue to train, continue to be healthy, continue to be smart. And so until they drop the green flag,
it's so wild to think about because there are so many riders where their dream is to ride the Tour de France. That is their dream.
Right.
Like, I get to go. That's, that's high-fiving and
oh man, that's career maker.
And they're right up till that moment, just hoping they get called up. It's wild to think about.
Which brings up a good point, Jay, because you were asking, because there is, in my, based on what I can see, there's really only one more race day these guys will have, which is next weekend for their respective national championships. And you sort of said to me, like, well, is that a big deal? And it really is. I mean, if you're a Belgian wearing your national champions jersey in the Tour on TV, I mean, it is a huge deal. Huge deal. I mean, for their corner baker, their corner butcher, like if they see, whatever his name is, it is a very, very big deal. Lots of pride goes into that. So they race their ass off for the national championship. And a lot of these countries have multiple teams. It's a big deal in those countries for those teams. I mean, Quick Step cannot lose the Belgian championships. That would be an utter and complete disaster.
Yeah.
They very well may. But Patrick Lefevre will be livid if they don't win.
I'm trying. So if a squad shows up for the Belgian national championships, riders from other countries can participate and support.
Negative.
No. Because I base that on the fact I've been to the U.S. Pro Championships.
I know, because in the old days they did, which is just, they don't do it anymore. But
they did. I'm not crazy.
Well, you might be crazy, but they don't do it anymore.
Now you have to be from that country to be in it.
But the old Core States championships here in Philadelphia in the United States was an international field, and I mean, it was just an American would cross the line in 7th, he'd have his hands in the air.
Right.
It's like,
it was very bizarre.
Wait,
right?
What? That doesn't make any sense.
So not to divert too much from talking about getting ready for the Tour. So how does that work then in the national championship? Is everyone on their own?
No, but
do you have alliances?
For example, Quick Step has enough Belgian riders
that they can work
for
together.
Sure.
Okay,
yeah. And then those other Belgian teams, they all. I guess some of these other countries. I'm looking at the list here. The Romanian national championship. Yeah, there's probably some unofficial alliances there, or the Venezuela, the Polish, look at all these countries that Portugal.
Or you think about Peter Sagan, Slovakia, well,
he's got his brother, and and by the way, he's wearing the rainbow jersey, so he doesn't care if he may not even go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I did read that Mark Cavendish is going. Of course, Mark Cavendish, any chance to put a number on his back, and he's like, 52 concussions in a row, and he's like, I race. He's unbelievable. The guy races like nobody's business. But I just want to say a couple of things about Tour of Switzerland that stood out to me. TJ Van Garderen, I thought we get a lot of questions about TJ on this show, but I thought he looked really good. He did a really solid time trial the final day, got third in the time trial. The most important thing about all this is not just, I'm going to say this, but it's true for everybody on that team. TJ Van Garderen is out of work. That team's not sticking around.
That's what's next in my notes. So you've touched on it in the past.
Richie Porte is out of work.
Yeah. And explain why again. I know if people haven't heard a previous episode, and we're talking about Team BMC, that basically this is their end of contract.
Well,
for these riders,
it's really unfortunate because my sense is the reason the team is not continuing is because Andy Reese, who founded Phonak hearing aid systems and founded BMC, passed away months ago, and was super passionate. He invested, by all estimates, it's $250 million in the sport of professional cycling over the course of his life. He passed. Was a great guy, and so then. BMC is a small Swiss bike brand. So to have a $25 million budget is not logical or sustainable. So they're shifting their priorities, probably go to another team just as a supplier, a bike supplier. But the team's going away. They haven't found a replacement. They haven't found any of the sub-sponsors to step up to the main sponsor level. And one of the best teams, strongest teams in the world is going to go away. And so, but the reason we should talk about this and think about it, and I don't think, of course, anything can change. I mean, Jim Akowitz can find a sponsor tomorrow. He can find one the day before. He can find one in the Tour. It's hard to find $25 million anywhere in this world. But if they don't, the dynamic in that team and how they race the Tour,
they're fending for themselves a bit.
Every man for himself.
Because they've got to get TV time. They got to get points. They've got to get recognized. Yeah. And so you may not see that loyalty you would typically see on a team because they're like, I need this stage win because I need a job next year.
It's not always, it shouldn't, if you make it that obvious, then that also reflects poorly upon the rider. So it'll be subtle, but it will be there.
You'll see it. Something to watch for in the Tour.
The other thing that was so remarkable for me, and it might even have been the most remarkable thing because I didn't think Richie Porte was remarkable despite winning. Hats off for winning. I thought it was an average performance, and good luck in July. Jakob Fuglsang, this fucker is ageless. I mean, I was racing with Jakob Fuglsang, and this guy. So that stage, the hardest stage where Quintana is lights everybody up. When Richie Porte is starting to struggle and looking around, guess who's catching him? Jakob Fuglsang.
Yeah,
and finishes with him. But even more incredibly and impressively was in the final TT, he moves. So everybody's talking about Porte and Quintana. Ken Quintana, blah, 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 blah. Porte goes from 6th to 2nd. I mean, Fuglsang goes from 6th place to 2nd place.
Yeah.
I mean,
how old of a guy is he?
I don't know. Hell, he's probably not that old, but he's old enough to have been racing with this dinosaur. But he's just so consistent and. Man, to me that was the most impressive part of Tour de Suisse.
I want to ask one more thing about the BMC dynamics, potentially a team going away. Let's say there isn't somebody that comes in, puts together sponsors, keeps it intact with new sponsors and money, right? I mean, if you were racing now and you saw some talent you wanted on that team, you'd be sniffing on it big time and wanting your director, like, we're landing this guy.
Oh, no, of course. Yeah,
right?
those are, but the sad part of, you're exactly right. The sad part of that is there are, half a dozen guys that are really wanted that bad. The others will be, they're not going to be begging, but they're going to be out really, really, really wanting to get a job, really wanting to get a new contract. But for sure, no, if you're on another team and there's somebody on BNC that is going to be unemployed, I mean, that's easy pickings. Mm-hmm. That's just like, you just ride up beside them and they're like, hey, guess where you're coming next year?
Right.
Like the guy's day. And so that's, you can either spot them at a really young, early stage, or you can, look, there's some champions on that team too, but obviously the bigger the champion, the bigger the amount of points they have, the more expensive they are. And as we know, there's the budgets in cycling, unless you're Team Sky.
Yeah.
They're not big.
Although it seems like, with big budgets, you win. It's like, if people could follow suit, I mean, it's just not that easy, but
yeah.
Why aren't people trying to replicate what Team Sky does anymore?
Well, because the sport, it's not... it's just not easy. The sport is not attractive to corporate companies around the world. It still has a bit of a taint and an odor to it. It continues today. I mean, even whether you talk about my generation, or whether you talk about the Chris Froome current situation, or whether, WADA issued a report the other day, and again, these things I just don't understand why it's always cycling. WADA issues a report and says tramadol and cortisone are still rife in the peloton. Well, did they study soccer? Right. Did they study tennis? Did they study rugby? Did you study anything else? Mm-hmm. And so we've and again, I'm getting a little heated here, because it just doesn't seem like it's very comprehensive when it comes to world and global sport. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I know.
Tell me a little bit more before we wrap up what the contenders are doing in this 3-week period. What's that life like?
Yeah, so I was texting just before we went on here. I was texting with TJ. He's actually going up for an altitude camp. Back up. I asked him. I said, "Are you racing again until the tour?" He said, "No." And I was starting to craft. I was like, I was basically saying, "Please tell me you're going to altitude." And next message comes in from him, "Going to altitude." I was like, "Okay, good." So they're probably most of these favorites will spend the next 2 of those 3 weeks at altitude, whether it's Tenerife. I won't say where TJ's going because that would be uncool. But there's places around Europe now where you can go and get high altitude living and low altitude training. Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they'll spend some time. How much time will they spend on their TT bike?
Depends who it is. If you're, and the TTs aren't that significant in this Tour de France, but you have to, that's an important piece of equipment. Mm-hmm. You just can't, and you can't feel foreign the one day you have to go sit on it. Like, it has to be something that your body goes, "Oh, I've sat here before."
Yeah.
So it has to be.
And then, because you've talked about it being a long time period without racing in your legs, do they try to simulate it with a lot of pace line or motor pacing? Or
motor pacing. Certainly motor pacing. It's a super old strategy and training technique, but motor pacing is the closest you can get to replicating racing.
And I know of a lot of our cycling fans that are hardcore, either know what motor pacing is or have done it, but those who don't know what you're talking about,
you basically get a moped or a scooter. You could get away with a motorcycle. A scooter, I think, is better, and you just sit behind it, and you have somebody. Ideally you have somebody who knows what they're doing, because you can really, A, mess yourself up if you're with somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, and B, just have a miserable experience if they can't keep the speed consistent. They can't,
or accelerate too quickly,
or when they get to the climbs, I motor pace TJ from time to time, and when I get to a climb, I know how to back that thing off. I know what it's like. I can look in the mirrors. I can see his face. So all of these little tricks, the best motor pacers learn and know, or were either racers in the past and did a lot of that. So it's just natural for them, but super, super important. And again, you bring up a good point. With 3 weeks, you can't go without race pace for 3 weeks. I don't think so. I wouldn't.
Okay.
So last thing here, I just want to say, we got a big month coming up in July. This one's going to, just to the listener, and chime in when you want, JB, but this one's going to look and feel much different than our ghetto asses in the Airstream last summer. We've ramped up things.
We've refined a few things.
On the production side, things have gotten a lot better. There will be a presenting sponsor for this summer's coverage of the tour with the, on TheMOVE here. We'll announce that at the preview show just days before the tour. There will also be other advertisers and partners and sponsors. And then the merchandise store is going to be, we have,
you're
getting a little tease in your hat too, but James Selman, our little propeller head creative guru, has gone crazy. And this shit, I'm telling you, it is so cool looking.
I know. I'm looking at a stack of new merch right over here, and I earlier was like, I really want to show this, and like, keep it quiet for right now, because we're gonna debut. A lot going in the store.
Patience, grasshopper.
I know, but really cool stuff.
And we should say is now maybe is a good time, because we know that so many of you were so supportive of stages up until We changed the name 6 weeks ago or so. And so you're basically walking around in an extinct brand.
Or a collector's item.
Or well, either one, whatever you choose to make of it. But we want to do something special for people that bought any Stages merch. So whether it's a Stages tee or a Stages hat, we'll figure out a way that we can move you into, see what I did there? The Move gear. So that you're staying, all the gear you're rocking is current and cool and it's not a dinosaur or not extinct. And so, anyways.
And I will say this too, because if you ever ordered a t-shirt or a jersey online, it shows up and you're like, you put it on, it just to let people know, like Lance personally was like, the samples. You're pretty particular about.
I mean, you guys are. I think you can. I hope you can see me and you see the color, but you don't. This is like.
You're very particular about the feel of. I mean, no, and not just for you. You care that we're putting out something
this is
that
no
people.
Hanes beefy tea.
Right.
We're done with that. The world is done with that. These are.
You'll be happy.
You will not be disappointed. And there's one other little element to all this that we'll announce in the pre-tour show that's really cool, and we'll also give you an opportunity to participate on a whole nother level.
True.
When it comes to the move, and so
some very, very insider type participation, and a couple shows potentially on the road. I know that mostly affects the people in this area. Part of the world.
We can't get too far from here.
I know.
It turns out it's not so easy to drive or fly from Colorado to New York.
Right.
But anyways, thanks for tuning in. I guess we won't talk to these people for 3 weeks. No, it'll be a little 2.5 weeks.
We'll be trying to stay healthy and motor pacing.
Yeah. Oh, one other last thing. Sorry. Yeah. JB will be motor pacing. I will be recovering from an ill-advised marathon. The one other thing I do want to say, and a special thank you to them, is we'll continue the partnership with Outside Magazine for this July. So the show will be on their website, and a condensed version of the show will run every day as essentially a blog from me about the stage. So shout out to Outside, and thanks to them for playing along. See you all in 3 weeks.